Welcome to Medieval Literature Crash Course, and today we'll be talking about the medieval literature. Literature refers to any work composed in Latin or the vernacular between approximately 476 and 1500 CE. It includes philosophy, religious treatises, legal texts, and works of imagination. And the term applies to literary works of poems, drama, romance, epic prose, and histories written in the vernacular.
Welcome back to Crash Course. We're talking about the language and audience of medieval literature. So the vernacular literature was further popularized in Britain and the Kingdom of Wessex by Alfred the Great in an attempt to encourage widespread literacy, and other nations then followed suit. And then the Norman Conquest in 1066 established French as language and literature and transformed the English language from Old English to Middle English. The stories were written both during these eras were originally medieval folklore, and they were just stories transmitted orally. And since most of the population was illiterate, books continued to be read out loud to an audience. Literacy rates rose during the 15th century with the development of the printing press, and then books became more available. Eagle.
Back to Medieval Crash Course. Today we'll be talking about early development. Medieval vernacular literature evolved naturally from the folktale, which was a story recited preferably with the storyteller acting out different parts before an audience. Medieval English literature begins with Beowulf, which was no doubt a story much known and transmitted orally until written down. In medieval English literature, the storyteller would gather an audience and perform his or her tale, usually with variations based on the audience, and members of the audience would then retell the story to others. Poetry with the regular cadence sticks in the mind far better than prose. Poetry would remain the preferred medium for artistic expression throughout most of the Middle Ages. Latin prose, except in some outstanding cases, was reserved for religious and scholarly auditions. Poetry, ballads, and hymns were poetry, of course, but the great chivalric romances of courtly love and the high medieval dream vision genres were also written in verse, as were epics, and the French and Breton lays short story poems. It was not until the 13th and the 14th CE that authors began writing under their own names. Initially, medieval writers were anonymous scribes setting down stories they had heard. Originally, in writing in the Middle Ages was not high on the list of culture values, and early writers did not bother to sign their works. This is Crash Course and Eagle.
Welcome to Medieval Crash Course. Today we're going to talk about other forms of medieval literature. Other forms of literature besides poetry include drama, history, and fables. Drama in the Middle Ages was essentially a teaching tool of the church. Morality plays, mystery plays, and liturgical plays all instructed in a literate audience in acceptable thought and behavior. Passion plays, reenacting the suffering, crucifixion, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, were popular Easter entertainments, but morality plays were presented year-round. Histories in the early Middle Ages frequently rely on fable and myth to round out and develop their story. Fables almost always featured anthropomorphized animals as characters and relying some moral lesson. Satirizing some aspect of humanity or encouraging a standard of behavior. Done. Eagle.
Welcome back to Medieval Crash Course. Today we're doing poetic forms and famous works. The most popular and influential works were the stories told in verse. The earliest poem in English, whose author is known as Caedmon's hymn, 7th century CE, which is a simple hymn praising God composed by an illiterate shepherd who heard it sung to him in a vision. The simple beauty of the early verse became the standard of Old English poetry and evident in works of the Dream of the Rood, and later the Battle of Malaban. Romances, which became quite popular with the European aristocracy, began to flourish in the 12th century CE in southern France. Ready?
Yeah.
The romance genre, whether given in poetry or prose, relies on audiences' acceptance of the concept that true love can never last or is unattainable. At the end of the story, one or both loves of the lovers dies or must part. The genre was developed further in the 12th and 13th century CE by poets such as Robert de Boron, Burrell, and Thomas of Britain, and the great German artist Wolfram von Eschkebach and Gotcha von Strasberg, who all contributed significant aspects to the Arthurian legend. Dreams, visions are poems featuring a first-person narrator who relates a dream which corresponds to some difficulty they're experiencing.